And welcome everyone to Project 180. This is the web experience where we try and turn your projects around. And I really want to say hello and welcome to my friend Nayusha Kasni. Hi.
Hi there.
Welcome aboard. Welcome to the crew. We want to talk today, and again, for folks who are just joining, we have these conversations, and I want everybody to be able to join in at any time. I will be asking many questions, will be engaging, but we don't need to monopolize the conversation. Nayusha and I are going to talk a lot about ambiguity and complexity in organizations and in planning. But I'm sure we've all got experiences when it comes to working with either very ambiguous, very complex, or even both those things kind of shoved together in our work. So Nayusha, I'm wondering if you could maybe start by introducing yourself a bit and telling us a bit about you and your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Nayusha Ghazni. I'm a Senior Director of Strategic Global Marketing at Emergent Biosolutions. I actually started my career in clinical trials working with patients in oncology. And I was very drawn to the healthcare side and direct patient impact of our pharmaceutical business, which is why I eventually ended up on the pharma side. And currently I look after I work for a pharmaceutical manufacturing company, and I look after any of our business development opportunities, but also any of our marketing initiatives.
So you work in an industry which is very regulated and very complex in many, many ways, not just from creating products, but from actually navigating, government relationships and things like that as well. So this is a space that just has complexity written all over it. Does that sound about right?
I would agree with you, absolutely, yes.
I'm putting it really simply. It sounds like your work is hard. It's kind of where we're getting to, right? So how would you describe, again, the theme today, we want to talk about ambiguity and complexity. So I know they can be interpreted in different ways. So I'm just curious, Nayusha, if you would maybe explain to you what those terms mean and why this is an important subject for you in your leadership roles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think complexity and ambiguity go hand in hand, but I do see them as two separate, distinct entities that have some overlap. So specifically in my world, complexity to me in the pharmaceutical industry means exactly what you just said, Kevin, something that's really, really hard, but you can probably figure it out. It just means you have to overcome a few steps or understand how to get to a solution. It's just hard. Ambiguity to me, and what I face as a leader is uncertainty. So when you don't have all the information you need to make decisions. So I'll give you an example of this is complexity. Let's just say I'm trying to manufacture a product that we've never done before. So it's complex because I don't know everything, but I have subject matter experts. We'll eventually figure it out. I'll work with my supply chain partners. We'll figure out how we manufacture the product, how we get the data, how we box it up, how we deliver it into our markets in Canada and the US. So that's complex. There's a lot of steps, but we'll figure it out. Ambiguity is when you don't know. So take that same product that I'm trying to manufacture. However, let's just say it's a brand new product that the FDA has never encountered or Health Canada has never seen before. So there's an unknown there. Let's say our clinical data is unknown. We don't know scientifically how the product will perform. Let's say that there are exogenous factors, i.e. tariffs, right now that might impact how this product is rolled out. So that to me is ambiguity. It exists. I might not have all the information I need to make a decision, but I have to find a way to deal with it.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, and the tariff example is a really good one. And a lot of companies are trying to manage this right now. And in a situation, and it doesn't even have to be tariff specifically, but something that literally seems to come out of nowhere, because it could be a tariff, it could be another, just a new government policy of some type. It could even be, like a weather event or something like that. How do you manage, an unexpected surprise, and now kind of throws maybe something that was maybe more clear, and suddenly it's a bit mysterious and nebulous and a bit more ambiguous.
Yeah, it's a great example. And I mean, for any industry we work in, we have to be ready to deal with ambiguity. And part of how I do that is I actually work very closely with our project managers, and we always create contingency plans. So we'll have a plan of action in place. We'll have milestones and timelines on what success and good looks like. But we'll also spend some time and we'll brainstorm, okay, what if this was to happen? And we'll come out with different scenarios, different contingency plans, not something that's fully flushed out, but something that started the thinking process so that if something unexpected does happen, at least we're a step ahead. You brought up the example of weather. So this actually happened in my field of work, is with an extreme weather event down in the southern states. All of a sudden, we physically could not deliver our products into the state because of how bad the weather and road conditions were. But thankfully, we had thought of that before. Did we have a perfect answer? No, but we were a step ahead of the game to figure out how we could actually deliver life-saving product to the residents in the southern states. And then you also mentioned the tariffs. Yeah, I think the tariffs kind of caught us all off guard. I think whether we like it or not, is going to impact all our businesses and how we think. But I actually do see a silver lining in this, is because with this sudden policy change, it's forcing us to think differently and innovate and adapt versus us continuously doing business as we normally do. So I think that exogenous or external factors like this are actually good for the business, because if we keep doing everything the same way we always did, we're going to get the same outcome. But now we're being forced to think about something we're uncomfortable with, and inevitably it's going to force us to come out better on top.
I really appreciate that answer. I like how you phrased the discomfort element, because when you get comfortable, you're resting literally on your laurels. If something comes, and it might not be a tariff, it might just be a competitor. Some other disruption occurs in your industry, whether it be pharma, whether it be steel, whether it be anything, and all of a sudden your business that you've been doing the same way for 100 years is now like you don't know you don't know where to go. I don't mean to pick on anybody in particular, but like Canada Post is a great example of just like an old world kind of business model, right? That it's set up to do certain things in a certain way, very hard to adapt to new industries and just a new way that the economies work.
Absolutely. And that's actually a great example you bring up, because they went on strike in December.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was people adapted and found other ways to get their mail. And we realized that in 9 out of 10 cases, getting mail delivered by Canada Post didn't impact us, or we found an alternative.
Yeah.
So that is a definition of creating an obsolete business model.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know where the disruption is going to come from. So it's best to have a mind towards this discomfort, as you say, and this like imagining what that could be. And you're right, even if it's not the thing you planned for, at least you've had a thought towards what it could be and what you might be able to do in reaction to that.
Absolutely. And another great example actually is the Hudson Bay Company. So here we have a Canadian company that's for 300 plus years. I don't know the ins and outs of what led to them and their bankruptcy, but I would strongly suspect is they couldn't keep up with the e-commerce channels that other retailers provided.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we've seen retail just collapse, right, in the last decade. Like it's changed entire papers are going to be written on this, but like the Target example from a few years back when they showed up in Canada and then they immediately left. There's been a lot of situations like that too, where expectations do not match reality.
Absolutely.
In terms of planning, like there's one thing to think of, okay, like you're kind of maybe stuck and you're comfortable in your little comfort zone working on your business the way it always does. But there's got to be a balance too, because you don't want to be considering so many changes or working through so many changes that like you have to find a nice midpoint. How do you kind of navigate, I guess the term would be like analysis paralysis? How do you stop yourself from going too far? Where's that sweet spot where you can kind of make some good plans but not overdo?
It's a good call out, and I think we all may be guilty of falling into analysis paralysis. There's only the thing I've learned is you can never have all the data to satisfy and make yourself extremely comfortable with whatever business decision you're putting forward. So in a way, it's being comfortable with the uncomfortable environment. And I think that speaks to the ambiguity, because there's going to be certain things that I don't know, and I'm going to make decisions blindly, but with the best available data and insights that I have, and I have to be okay with that. And I do that actually quite a lot in our business development, with my business development side of my job. And so part of that is, at some point you have to say, this is good enough, this will get me 80% there. Part of it also means that I myself don't get emotionally invested, because the decision can sway left, right, center with new information or new data. So I have to stay very objective and focused. So I always like to go back to the original question, which is, what are we trying to do? Or what are we trying to get out of this? So I stay focused on that, and I communicate a lot. I communicate up to senior leadership. I communicate down to any of the managers who work in my team, and always ensuring there's stakeholder alignment and buy-in, but specifically right from the beginning. And I find that's extremely helpful, because if everyone is hearing the same information, if everyone is comfortable with that ambiguity right from the beginning, it helps move you towards a solution that everyone's comfortable with backing up.
A couple of good points there. I dig in a bit. I think the always coming back to the goal, because that's got to be your North Star, right? We're trying to get here. We need to get there, and the path is going to change, every 20 minutes depending on what's happening. And I like how you said, to be comfortable with the discomfort, like you have to expect a certain amount of pain to try to get there. Because the worst thing you could do is get emotionally, like you're married to this idea and you're committed to this one path and it doesn't work. Your frustration level just skyrockets, and you're angsty, and the communication starts to break down. And now there's different groups in the organization trying to do different things. It gets very complicated. And so also, to your point of communications, making sure everybody's hearing the information and everybody's involved in that conversation, all your stakeholders, regardless of their position on an org chart. So they're all actively receiving the latest, but also able to participate in that conversation, because it really shouldn't be up to one person to navigate this. If you're the leader of your team, that doesn't mean you're solely responsible for making every decision and making sure the business is successful. It's really about the greater team as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that, I love what you just said. It's not a single person necessarily making a decision, but how are you influencing your stakeholders and advocating so that all of will eventually get to the right decision for the business. And it's not a single person who will come up with that answer.
Speaking of other people, I was going to pivot over, and I know, Pete, you're on camera. I was wondering if I could call you out for a minute, because I know you've got a lot of experience PMing in government and high tech and lots of other industries. What's your take on this in terms of where the level of ambiguity becomes, comfort becomes discomfort, and your level of discomfort and accepting that? Like, how are your feelings on this?
I think a lot of it depends on the organization and how supportive they are of the PM to be able to make that reach as well too. I've worked for some very conservative organizations there that are so afraid that basically you need to more or less sell them on why you're viewing something as the way that you are and how it's correct, versus others like I'm saying like a traditional startup that is more like race to the finish line as fast as you can. Sure, let's try that. Fail fast, fail often. You want to fail 75 times tomorrow? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I like the fail fast terminology because I'm spent a lot of time in high tech too. So that's the mantra, right? You figure it out. If it's not right today, we'll make it right tomorrow.
Right.
But that's not necessarily a scalable situation, but it's great when you're in that scrappy startup environment. But when you get to a certain point, and to Nayusha's point, her organization is massive multinational corporation, you don't have that kind of bandwidth, right? To necessarily, I'm making an assumption, Nayusha, based on my experience with larger organizations, but taking bigger risks is maybe a little more challenging in an organization like that. Would you agree with that?
I would. And I think you raise a really interesting point, Pete, because even in a large organization, I would say those two polarities exist depending on what you do. So if it's, and I'm going to use pharmaceuticals. Let's just say it's a well-established brand I'm working on. Yeah, we're going to be more risk averse. Like we have to move the project forward. We have to move tasks forward. But if it's a brand new launch or a brand new product I'm working on, then we're more risk tolerant in a way because we don't know. So I think what you mentioned in terms of get it out there quickly, let it fail quickly so that we have our answer. I've done that before in pharma, but I've also been on the other side in pharma where we can absolutely not risk anything because this is a mature brand and it's in market and we have to keep doing what we know works.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, Kevin, that surprises me because I would be concerned about serious illness or death in pharmaceutical. Like I always thought that was no, we have to test this on 75 different species and what have you before we even release it to market, because I'm always amused by the US ads that talk about all the side effects, including some pretty gross ones.
You're absolutely right. All of that happens preclinical, but when it gets to pre-launch or what I do about to like working with inline brands, we do have that flexibility to kind of work with how tolerant or how risky we want to be.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But yes, we know the drugs are safe. We know they've been tested. They've been tested on 75,000 people. All that.
Right. Have you ever found yourself? I mean, we're talking about being aware and looking for maybe that the area of discomfort to kind of introduce maybe if you're getting a little too comfortable. Have you ever found yourself in that routine and you just kind of realize maybe we need to change this up?
I absolutely. It's so hard to get like blinders on and become narrow vision and just work towards accomplishing a task. And especially when I work with my PMs, it's all about where are we tracking? Did we hit that milestone? Did we do that? Are we on to the next step? It's so easy to just get into the day-to-day grind of tracking yourself against that because it feels good. You check off a box, you accomplish something. It gives you a ton of endorphins for saying, yes, I did something today. I do think it's important though, and I'm guilty of this too, but I'm working actively on pulling myself out, but really moving yourself out of the day-to-day and looking at the project or the task or whatever it may be and constantly questioning, are we doing this the best way possible? Are we staying on our path? Are we achieving what we said we would do, or are we straying? is there actually a better way to do this? Is there information or insights that we never considered? And so I am guilty of this. I've done this before. And what I actively now try to do is, I call it the white cap, but I try to put on my white cap and pull myself out of the day-to-day logistics or technicalities of the project and focus on the higher up. So I take a 30,000 view on how does this fit in with what our strategy is doing, and is there an actual better way to do this? And so I'll take that to my team to challenge. And I find that when you're not in the day-to-day activities, it's a lot easier to do that because you don't get swarmed in with all the nuances of what needs to happen. And I think it's really important for any task, any industry, any project you're working on, is to have that person and to really have someone who can focus on the task at hand from a different lens.
I agree. I like that too. It's just in terms of, project management universe. And I've worked with a lot of small teams, big teams that you have to, in software development, for example, like you're, the whole agile thing, you're iterating on the product and you're, getting little pieces done every couple of weeks or whatever your sprints are, and you kind of building it. But you need to have that white cap perspective where you're not just iterating the product, you're iterating the process itself that you're working on. Because it's great, we're getting our widgets produced, but are we doing it the best way we can? Someone's got to be playing that devil's advocate and kind of poking at the process. I think we could do this better. And I think too, that doesn't just come from, the person with that white cap on. It's part of the team conversation, because like any change management type initiative, it has to really come from the people who are doing it, right? So how do you navigate that when, or how do you make sure your team is able, willing and able to kind of share that kind of information or those opinions when time comes?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I have a great example of this. We, in one of the brands I had worked on, we thought we could grow sales by targeting a brand new customer. And we were so excited, and there was so much upside. And yeah, by going out and by targeting this group of physicians who we've never called on before, we can actually uncover a new segment of the market. And our entire team focused on, how do we make this work? Let's get subject matter experts. Let's create new material. We invested a ton of resources. And what ended up happening is that strategy failed. And the reason being, and none of us considered this, is by seeing that group of physicians, it meant you had to take time to book an appointment. They can't see you right away. They would give you an appointment 3 weeks from now. Even if you did go to that appointment, they gave you maybe 10 minutes. And so that completely contrasted against what we were currently doing, which were the reps could actually go into the office of the customers we were currently seeing and see them right away. So they were able to make 8-10 calls a day because it was an instant transaction versus this new physician group. But because we were so narrow visioned on this would be a great segment to target to grow sales, nobody thought of the implications of, okay, could this actually slow down our selling cycle? Right. And so I pulled that. I after we had enough data in market, I made the decision to pull it because it just didn't make sense. But this is an example of where, if you have someone on your team who can consider all the different angles, like what's the impact on the cross-functional partners, what's the impact on the rollout, the sales team, how will they perceive it, you can pick up these things beforehand.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And it's good. You're always trying to make the best decision with the information you have available now. It means a week from now, you might make a better decision. But yeah, at some point you have to kind of make a firm decision and go left or right or continue straight or whatever it might be. I'm just you can call out to the other folks on the call. I know there's a handful of folks here. If anybody has thoughts, questions, feel free to click the raise hand button and join in anytime. Happy to hand the mic over whenever you'd like. It was an interesting story about, this new physician segment that you're talking about. Any other kind of examples of an internal launch or working internally, and how things may have had to pivot based on new information? You're working through something.
Yeah, I work within the US environment in a highly competitive landscape. And so with the different competitors, both branded and generic, there's always new information that comes up. Specifically though, there was a product SKU I was launching and bringing into the US market to help complement what the sales team was doing. And we were very excited about this product because it would provide more value to our customers, and it would make the selling of our existing drug products a lot simpler. And what ended up happening was we had another company that actually beat us to the punchline. And so it was recognizing at that moment, how do we pivot but still salvage all the work that went into bringing this value add into market? And we were able to do that. It just meant that our timelines took longer before we launched, but it forced us to take a deeper look into what it is we're actually bringing and what is the value we want to bring that we know will drive additional sales, but will also differentiate us from the competition.
Yeah, that's a great example again of a disruption that you don't see coming. Think you're on a path, and then all of a sudden the path is cut off, so you have to go create a new one.
Absolutely.
So we have a visitor. Just want to say hello. This is
hello.
This is Freckles. She was sitting over here whining, so I'm like, okay, she just woke up. She needs attention, so she's joined in our conversation. Let's talk about long-term planning, because I know something I've always struggled with is, again, high-tech startups, things like that, even nonprofits and things. Long-term planning is hard. Sometimes you can look out a year. Sometimes you can only look out a few months, depending on the context of what you're working on. How do you manage to balance out long-term planning in your teams, for example, versus all that short-term agile pivoting and changing that has to come about? How do you approach that with you?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because if you're constantly planning, then where do you have time to focus on the day-to-day business? Yeah, I know it's the conundrum I think we all face. It's so in my line of work, we do 1-year planning, 5-year, and 10-year planning. So I can tell you that 10-year planning, I probably spend this much amount of time on. 5-year planning, I give it a lot more emphasis. The 1-year planning is probably where we do the bulk of the work, and there's a set cycle as to when that happens. So our 1-year planning, so i.e. 2026 planning, gets kicked off around February, and there's set milestones throughout the year with the goal to accomplish our planning and to have it complete by October. And there's certain time periods that we block off in everyone's calendar to say, this is what we're talking about, or this is what we're presenting, or this is when senior leadership needs to see the plan. So those are already in calendar. And that's really helpful, because if you're done your 2026 planning, let's just say by October, you already have a line of sight into what January 2026 looks like. So you're spending that last quarter of the year, and in pharma, December is a shortened month. People don't tend to maybe purchase as much. There's holidays. So you really spend the bulk of that last quarter planning and getting yourself ready to have a quick start. So I find that by having a set cycle and calendar dates on hold, it helps you focus your time and energy on planning during specific periods, and so you can spend the rest of the time on the day-to-days of the business. Not say there won't be tweaks here and there, but it's not as time consuming.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, it's something that I've certainly seen and tried a few times. I don't think with that, the regularity that you're talking about, like it's in the calendar. It's just what we do, and I think that just makes it. It's not even, you can't even call it discipline. I mean, it is, but it's just the way we do it, and it makes perfect sense to kind of that way things come up every quarter, you can pivot and change. No, this OKR or this KPI isn't quite lining up. Let's change that. You can do all that kind of stuff much more quickly and much more responsibly, I guess.
Absolutely. And going back to something you had said before, it stops the analysis paralysis because you have to deliver by that date.
Yeah. It's a wise setup. I think it's very easy to get caught up in the spiral, right? And I've seen this again, back to the startups, but if you've got a business model, sometimes there's the shiny objects that pop up, right? Oh, there's a great opportunity over here. Let's jump on that. Okay. So now all of a sudden we dedicate some time and resources to figuring this problem out, even though it wasn't our goal a month ago. So that can be very difficult. Again, I'll throw, and Cheng just joined the call too. Hi, Cheng. I'm curious what other people find in terms of that shiny object chasing, which can happen. It can happen in larger organizations too. I think there's more guidelines generally in place in larger organizations. Sorry, now I've got to put my dog down. But in smaller organizations, how do you manage focus? And how do you make sure the focus is consistent? Again, I'll gladly throw it to Pete because I know he's got opinions on everything. But anybody else on the call too, I'm curious what you think.
That's a good point, Kevin, because I find that within organizations there, you have the roadmap, and everybody's comfortable with the roadmap and they know the roadmap. So therefore it's kind of same old boring, as opposed to the sexiness of chasing something that is unplanned and unscripted and may have phenomenal returns kind of thing, right? That's why leprechauns always chase the pot of gold, right? So I
great analogy, by the way. And just after St. Patrick's Day, I want to bring that up.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly. And since I'm 3 feet tall, I relate to leprechauns. So I find that especially the dreamers within the organization, or I'm not going to say the desperate, but sometimes you kind of wonder what the motivation is to be chasing after the newest and greatest without full planning. And I'm a little OCD, therefore I appreciate some good planning that goes into it, as opposed to today let's jump on this horse and next week let's jump on that horse. See who makes it to the finish line.
And in the meantime, you bankrupt your company. So go ahead, Ayusha.
I love that though, because I purposely, when I form my teams or when I hire, I love bringing in someone who's a thinker or a dreamer or an ideator. And I love putting them with the project manager, because there is conflict at the beginning, but then they end up doing such great work. Because the ideas are normally stuff that I would have never thought of. They almost kind of seem impossible. My immediate go-to is, okay, but how are you going to get that done? And how are we going to get that done with everything else going on in the business? But when I put these two types of people together, all of a sudden you have this amazing innovation that came out and they figured out a way to get it done.
What I like about that also is that I think that that kind of breeds out the bad ideas. So when you've got the dreamer with the PM, you have the professional debating, bantering, battling type thing, right? Which gets one of the two saying, you know what, you're absolutely right, that doesn't have wings. So you hear about the successful ones where the two of them go, you know what, that could work.
Mm-hmm. Or it could work, but if we do it this way.
Yeah.
I'm loving this. It's such a great little topic that we've dug into. And Ayusha, about hiring. I'm curious what you're thinking there too, because you brought that up. But what kind of, I guess, traits are you looking for to bring in your team? I mean, yes, you want a couple of dreamers maybe but obviously you want to balance that off with more of the practical right brain, left brain kind of people. But how do you approach new hires and kind of building and moving the team around as necessary?
It's a really good question, and I take a really, I don't want to say I take a really long time, but I do my due diligence to hire the right fit for the team, because our teams are small, especially where I work. And so one different personality or style type throw everyone off. So I take my time to ensure I'm hiring the right fit for the team. The other thing I purposely do is I try not to hire two of the same people. So if I have a driver, a motivator, a type A on my team, I'm not going to hire another person like that. Or if I have a dreamer, an ideator, then I'm not going to hire another person like that. I always hire for attitude rather than technical skills, because I can teach you technical skills. I can't teach you attitude. That's intrinsic. So that motivation, that intrinsic ability to work, your ambition, that comes internally. And then the other thing I do is I hire people who are smarter than me, or who have a skill set I don't have, because I like to complement the team with people from different backgrounds and experiences that can bring in unique perspectives that I might not necessarily have.
Mm-hmm. And I've always felt the same. If I'm going to hire someone, I want them to know more about the thing than I do.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't need to know, like, if I'm hiring an accountant, I'm not an accountant, right? I'm not going to go off and get my degree for the next 4 years. That's not going to happen. I need to bring somebody in who knows that really well. So I think the same goes for any skill set. I need somebody who's going to have more expertise so they can tell me this is the right way to go, and they can make all the suggestions they need to make.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
in terms of just project management, writ large, with like, some people are really good at the planning and the writing of the project plan and doing all this kind of stuff, and some people aren't, and that's a skill set into itself, and all the communication that's really involved in the project management process, right? Like, you need to have some people with not just I can make a list of to-dos for everybody, but really being able to engage, communicate, and motivate a team as well. Tosin, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to add something regarding what Mrs. Natusha said regarding hiring people that only have skills that you don't have. What if you have a situation whereby as a PM you have the multiple skills, but you are so much preoccupied in other tasks, and you need someone that has that skill that you have, but since you have other tasks to accomplish, you cannot do it at that time. Would you hire that person?
Sorry, Tosin, I'm not quite understanding the question. What I think I heard, and I'll see if I get this right, is you're looking to hire somebody with kind of complementary tasks, essentially, or complementary skills to be able to take on tasks.
Yes, like I was saying, she said that you can only hire someone that has a skill that you don't have. Then what if you have a situation in which you have like multiple tasks to do, and you actually have those skills, and you need to get someone to do it for you, though you have the skills to do it, but you don't have the time to do it at that time because you have other tasks? Would you hire such a person?
I think I get the gist of your question. So it's if you need to get something done, but you might have the skill sets for it, but don't have the time to do it, what kind of person would you bring in that situation?
Yes, just exactly as you said.
Yeah, I've been in that situation before, and sometimes, like, you just need to bring in the right person with the skill set to get the job done. And this was, I faced this in a previous role where we were launching a brand new product. It was in a very unique space, and we needed a sales manager who could motivate the team, who knew the customers, who could get in there and basically start on day one. So that's what we hired, because that's what we needed. it didn't give me the opportunity at that time to maybe bring in someone who didn't have those technical skills, but it was this group of physicians, you know them, you already have relationships, you've done this role, you know what you're doing, we need you to get in and start. And that's, I think in those situations, that's completely okay, because the circumstances are different. But it's more taking a look at what is it that I need to get done and who is the right person for the role.
Agreed. I think that's very insightful. I think because it's one thing to say, yeah, I want to build the team and complementary skills, but sometimes you got a thing that needs to get done right now, and you like that search is very different.
Agreed.
It's something you have to, and I mean, when I've had to do something like that, that's when you forego. You don't forego HR, but you kind of navigate around like the formal job postings sometimes, and you hit the network. It's like, hey Pete, do you know somebody who does this? And hey Naoshi, do you know somebody who can do that? And I find that's the way it at least has worked for me in those kind of situations, because you need somebody who understands you and the need right now.
Agreed.
We've got about 8-ish minutes left until the top of the hour. Happy to keep going. And I wanted to ask, again, anyone has questions, unmute, go for it at any time. But I'm going to ask you a kind of a traditional, big towards the end of the interview kind of question. Okay, like the advice question for like the new people starting off in their lives as, in whether it's marketing or PM or whatever they might be. But back to the ambiguity question. I think this is the thing that people struggle with. A lot of PMs, I think, struggle with ambiguity, because I've seen so many project managers join a team and, well, I'm going to spend the next 6 weeks writing out a risk register, and all the problems that we might come up with. It's like, no, I don't need you to write out, this compendium novel of whatever, of all these possibilities. I need you to start talking to the team and navigating the team. How do you recommend somebody deals like that they're struggling with the ambiguity? They just can't quite take it. What's some advice you might kind of suggest that person to just jump in and just free fall and just be okay with it?
I know it's tough.
It really is. These people struggle. I see it all the time.
I know. I faced this with one of my project managers. They were like typical by the book PM, which I love, type A, got everything done, over communicative, like wanted certainty and answers. And we were working on a very ambiguous project. And so I could start seeing that discomfort with her. Yeah.
Popping out of the forehead.
And so the advice I gave her was listen to understand rather than to do. If you're uncomfortable with the ambiguity, leave that to me. I'll deal with it. But listen so that you're hearing all sides. And then when a final decision or step has to be taken or documented or acted on, I will let you know. But I didn't want to keep her away from those conversations, because she would be in meetings, she would listen and be like, oh, I got to do that. Oh, I have to track that. Oh, I got to follow up on that. And she was driving herself insane. And I said, I want you in the meetings, but I want you to just listen to understand what's going on and to see the different perspectives. I will tell you, like with this ambiguous kind of issue, I will tell you when you need to action if something actually comes to fruition. And that helped. And then what ended up helping is she got into a rhythm of understanding what is conversation, i.e. brainstorming, versus what are actionable steps that she actually needs to focus on.
And that's a very good delineation, I think, because so many meetings, and whether intended or not, kind of turn into brainstorming, how are we going to figure this out? And so you've got 40 minutes and you've got that junior PM just trying to write everything down, and process all that information, when it's really not, that's not the best approach.
Yeah.
Just kind of listen and kind of get involved with this, just start seeing the flow of how things are moving, And then, yeah, as you're getting to the end, maybe there's a resolution or next steps being suggested. And that's when you have to do, okay, that's when you put the PM hat on and say, okay, well, that means we have 2 action items from this call. You're going to do this, you're going to do this. We're going to check in on Tuesday. And that's what that, kind of junior PM can kind of jump on.
Yeah, it's fascinating because the best PMs I've worked with are the ones who can do that, take the information, know what's relevant to be able to action on, but then draw parallels and give context and relate to previous things that have been discussed before. And I find a lot of the vendors I work with, who I work with their project managers, do this really, really well, because they're able to take all that information and not think of it as purely transactional, day-to-day, I just need to record everything and make sure stuff gets done, but more so, hey, you said this, but how does this relate to what we talked about a week ago? This will impact, did you want to maybe change this a bit?
Yeah.
And I find those are the best PMs that I work with.
Agreed. Okay, a couple minutes to go. I'm going to give an opportunity for anyone to jump in. Pete, you again got your camera on if you want to jump in and share anything. Chang, Raheel, Tosin, Christian, feel free to jump in, or we'll wrap things up momentarily. Any final questions at all? Pete, unmuted. Go for it.
No, I thought this was an excellent dialogue. I really appreciate your expertise and your insights as well too. The one comment that you made about hiring people that are smarter than yourself or perceive as smarter than yourself. I mean, that's the difference between a true leader and a boss. So I always said the same thing too, because the majority of people are smarter than me. But a boss is actually is concerned about having somebody smarter than them, right? It'll make them feel dumb. It'll, they'll end up being redundant and whatever. They fear smartness. Yeah. So I really appreciated what you said about giving people their due and recognizing their strengths.
I appreciate that. Thank you. My favorite go-to is, I don't get this, so I need you to explain this to me.
Yeah, exactly. That's what, as a former BA, that's what I used to say with all the technical people there. It's like, okay, talk to me like I'm stupid or 5, and please walk me through why is this anything that comes with cybersecurity and infrastructure and that. I'm the first one to say, okay, walk me through this,
Yeah. Chang, you've got your hand up. Please go ahead, take the mic.
Yeah, so I came in a little bit late, but I just had a what would you do? So for example, if you're managing a product or sort of, and there's it's the nature that this product has so many, cross dependencies enterprise wide, where so many departments have a piece to contribute or to, or use this information from that product too. So how would you just go about coordinating between those complexities between one another and the dependencies?
It's a really good question. It's actually something I do consistently in my line of work. Is I take on big, heavy, complex projects, but there's so many cross-functional partners and departments involved, and it's how do you navigate making sure people know what they need to. And I actually, what I do right at the beginning is I bring everyone in, and I bring in one representative from every department. I kind of lay out the ground rules to say, what are we doing? Why are we doing? Why are you here? What's expected of you? How does this impact you? What are we hoping to get? So basically the 5 W's and the H. It's really simple. The who, what, when, where, why, how, and just have an answer for those. And then I level set my expectation to say, you are welcome. I'm gonna meet weekly to discuss, the next steps for this project. Our project manager will schedule this in. You are welcome to join. But then I become very diligent on the meeting invite to say who has to be there versus who's optional. And I will email, let's just say I need my regulatory partner there. I will make sure and say, hey, we are discussing this topic and I need your input. So I need representation. And then that way I'm mindful of everyone's time. So not everyone has to attend every meeting, but everybody knows what's going on and they trust me to know that when they need to be brought in, I'll kind of ping them and say, I need you in there.
It's really good. Because, yeah, definitely. Also, like, yeah, definitely reducing the amount of attendees who do attend the meetings. So that's something that I also want to reduce, because when there's too many people there, it's often not good because people are always, wanting to say something too. And so, yeah, definitely reducing and just identifying who actually really needs to be there. So thank you.
Yeah, who needs to be there? I find I experience that as well. So I'm very firm on only one person from each department. So not 2 or 3 or the entire department. Who is the one person who's speaking on behalf of legal or compliance or what IT or whatever group it might be. And then I'm very, very deliberate about this is what we're discussing and these are the voices I need present. Everyone else is optional.
Okay.
That's great and very, very, very deliberate and makes a lot of sense. And it's right sizing your meeting, which is good for you, makes things more effective in the call, but also frees people up if they don't need to be there. And it's clear if they don't you don't want hangers on, which is kind of muddy the water sometimes. So that's very, very, very
And I'll
good
tell
advice.
you, maybe we can close it up on this because we're at 1 p.m. But what ends up happening is that when you consistently do this approach, people start trusting the process and they recognize stuff gets done. And people and your team members are happy to see progress that's happening either with or without their presence. And there's trust in the process to know that their opinion will be brought in when it's needed.
Amazing. Well, I think you're right. It's 10, we just turned 102. We'll wrap it there, but I want to say thank you, Nyusha, for spending the time today and sharing your expertise with this collected ragtag group of project managers around the planet. Appreciate that, and thanks everybody for coming and with your questions and emojis that I saw flying across the screen. Thanks for that too. It's been a real pleasure, and we hope to see you next time.